walking through the mall with your 12-year-old when suddenly they decide that they want to have a fit over something. I mean, literally, a meltdown right in the middle of the mall. Hello, I'm Rowena Starling, welcoming you to the Save Your Breath show, where we help parents eliminate the stress and aggravation of parenting, whether your child is 5 or 50. Now, this whole scenario with the melting down in the mall, whether the child is 2 or 10, or whether you have an adult or significant other, these difficult people tend to eat our energy and our well-being, you know. The thing about it is we need to pay attention to how we're feeling in those particular moments. I am pretty good myself about having that kind of stuff roll off of my back, but it wasn't always this way. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I noticed that I had this constant cringing sort of tightness that would come about. I didn't have a 2-year-old or a 10-year-old at the time, but the point is dealing with difficult people, whoever they are, tends to affect our cells. We just walk around thinking, well, I will just deal with this. This is something that happens. But really, this is detrimental to your health. Many people really feel that when they encounter someone difficult or a difficult situation, and they get that pit tight pain in their stomach or that tension across the shoulders or that headache, that's a signal that something is going on with you that you need to handle. People are going to be difficult. There's nothing you can do about that. But how you deal with the difficulty physically, yourself, psychologically, yourself, makes the difference in what's going on with you then and rolling into the future. I can trace my particular situation back to when I was a little kid. My mother was a very strict disciplinarian. I used to get whoopings. And I finally figured out how to stop getting those whoopings. But as we become older, and as I roll through time, I noticed that I had certain, reactions or flinches or reactions to people that, when I think about it, it did stem from those encounters with my mother. I mean, she'd walk up on me when I was not looking and give me a good one because of something I'd done, and then she'd explain it later, you see. And so this leaves a mark on the psyche, not to mention the physical part. As I became an adult, this became problematic. Now, this is something at the time that I thought was normal. We tend to think, well, that's the way I am. This is how I roll. Someday I'll get over it or it'll subside or whatever it is. But the reason we're talking about this is that these things, even the slightest anxiety, just the slightest that you're kind of carrying around with you, is the equivalent of carrying a 30-pound weight in each hand 24/7. I want you to think about that for a second now. That's a lot of wear and tear on your body, moving gently through time with anxiety, just a gentle anxiety. Think about what's going on when you have that and then something heavy piled on top of it that's happening on a regular basis. I don't know what's going on in your life, whether it's at work or at home. These things are affecting our health, our cells, just the synapses and nerves and all the things that are going on with our brain and our spinal cord. A lot of times parents think in their old age that this is normal to be having chronic disease and cancers and all of these things, and this is not normal. This is not something that you just get to old age and accept. These diseases stem from carrying weight that we're strong enough to carry when we're younger. But when we're younger is when we needed to nip it because as we move through time and it accumulates, it compounds, and then eventually, as we get older and the body does wear, it is, a machine, it breaks down as it gets older, and then these diseases and discomforts flower into chronic problems. Premature aging. How many people out there are willing to roll with that one? All of that stuff accumulates. So dealing with difficult people is part of it. And these difficult people can be your children or, like I said, someone at work. And the thing to pay attention to is how you're feeling in the moment with that encounter. Make a note of this. There's no one out there. There is no one out there making you feel anything. It has to do with what's going on inside of you and what you're attracting to yourself. Who we are and how we're feeling will attract certain kinds of experiences and people to us. And that thing to do is to get clear on what is going on inside of yourself, find the kernel of that problem, and pluck it out. One of the things that I do for my clients in the family system that I have created is the ability to have them go in and pluck out specific problems that they keep having over and over and over again without really fully understanding why. Many times it stems from something in the past that we've brought forward, and it keeps going forward and forward. So part of that family system that I created, it has five steps in it. Part of that system, what runs through that system, is every time we encounter some sort of nick like that in the psyche or the heart with the client, we go in and nip that out. Now this is something that I can offer to people. I call it, nowadays I call it emotion emancipation. It's formally known as my Get Out of Fear and Anxiety and Phobia session. So, as I was saying, I was going through time here as a young adult with this cringing, tightening thing because of my encounters with people, not fully feeling comfortable in my body and with myself because of the abuses that I suffered at the hands of my mother. She was just giving me a whooping. How many people have had that happen? But this is tantamount to bullying these days. And when you become an adult, they don't call it bullying anymore. It becomes something else. We find other words for it. But ultimately, even in my 20s, I kept attracting, and early 30s, I kept attracting certain situations where people would bully me. And one in particular stands out. And the way you get to know some of this is happening and coming down is because there are unfair accusations against you maybe, or you have an inability, like in my case, to explain yourself thoroughly and clearly and communicate what you're really after, what's really going on with what you're doing. And one case in particular that was really kind of the turning point for me was at some point I started my own business, and I brought some women on to be part of my business. But what happened was they bullied me because they felt that they were better than me, and they probably were, but with the bullying part, they needed to be more loving in their approach. Because there were more than one occasions when I would leave these meetings with them in tears, or there would be a shouting match going on, and I couldn't understand why this was happening in my own business, you see. And so it wasn't until much later that I realized that that was bullying. Well, the turning point really came for me when, as I was leaving one of these dinners, having met with these ladies, I was in tears. And as I was driving down the freeway at 70 miles an hour, I was coming across a bridge, and you know how traffic kind of stops as you're approaching a bridge. I didn't, through the tears, I wasn't paying attention to that. I was just, go in my head about what had just happened and my feelings about what had just happened. And this had culminated over a period of time. I mean, I was crying myself to sleep at night for weeks and months. It seemed like, I can't remember exactly how long it was. But as this traffic was slowing down and I'm still rushing toward it, by the time I realized it, I was right on someone's tail, and I slammed on the brakes. And then you know how you do that, slam on the brakes, and to avoid hitting them, you kind of turn your car to the side. I mean, I don't know what the thought is about that one. But as I turned and looked behind me, an SUV behind me was coming at me doing the same thing. Well, I made the decision right then and there that I needed to get out of whatever it was that I had going on that allowed me to be so affected personally by what other people were saying and doing. That was a turning point for me. And from that point on, I returned to my meditation. What happens is when you start to feel bad about yourself or things are not going the way you want them to go, you drop a lot of things that are good for you because your mind wants to keep you down. And so I returned to my meditation and I began to look actively for solutions to my issues with these feelings. Speaking of meditation, what do you feel is the point of meditation in the first place? I understand quite a few of us are meditating these days. If I'd ask you to show hands, but I can't see you, so I won't be able to tell. But the core point of meditation is for us to get in the zone. And what do I mean by the zone? I mean, it's to get in the zone and stay there. After meditation is over, to then get up, walk around, be in life in the zone. And this zone is that place where we make magic happen. We're totally focused. And because we're focused with a clear mind and 100% in intention and on point with what we're doing, magical things happen. This is what we need to have. Not only that, we need to be able to share how this works with our children, which is part of the point of the calling segment of the family system I've created. The thing about it is, you don't know what you don't know when you're dealing with difficult people. And there are many aspects of who we are. I know you don't think that you're a bad guy in any way or somebody who's, an evil person, but you may have just a kernel of that in you, just enough to, be surprised at what you'd say or do. Same thing with other people. An important thing to remember here, you may want to make a note of this, and I'm sure you may have even heard it before, is life is 10% what happens to us and 90% how we handle it. That's a quote from Chuck Swindoll. And it's true. When we talk about life being 10% how we handle it and no one being out there, that has to do with the fact that it's all a matter of what's going on with you and what you're reflecting back and forth. And if you are looking at what happens to you as a reason to continue to make yourself feel bad, then you are feeding into your own problem. How you react to it. How do you feel about it? Can you laugh in the face of absurd chaos. I mean, you have to have some fun with some stuff that's going down. And one of the things that I noticed is that as I began to solve these issues with myself, fewer of these instances come up, or not at all, compared to what was going on before. Why? Because I took care of it inside here, got rid of the kernel of it, and that stuff isn't coming at me anymore. And if it does come at me, I'm not recognizing it physically as something that's an attack on me. I'm letting difficult people be difficult people, and I'm just doing what it is that I do. A method that I have, that I've shared with my clients about how to handle it. You may here are a few items. The first thing is when you can see that this is happening, there's this unjust accusation, or you're having trouble with someone, it's just difficult, the situation, the person, whatever it is. There are 3 steps that I think are very important for you to be able to execute in that moment, like that nanosecond before your cells become involved. And that is, when it's happening at that moment, stop your mind. That's the first thing. The next thing is to then relax your body. And the third is to see that person as yourself. Can you tell me why that matters? What difference does it make to see that person as yourself? Well, then you engage. Now, if you hate yourself, this is problematic, okay? Right? It's not going to work. But we're going to assume you love yourself. If you hate yourself, we need to work on that. I'm here for you. But the thing is, when you see the person as yourself, a certain amount of compassion kicks in, right? Because we love ourselves and we seek to understand. We'll seek to understand. That means that a curiosity has kicked in. And then you're able to, in that space, come up with the appropriate response. Very important. Why? Because we don't want to engage in these chronic diseases now or later as a result of going through time thinking that certain energy that we carry, certain behaviors that we engage in that are negative and eating at our core are normal. That is not the normal that we're working for right here. We're not looking for that kind of normal. There's all kinds of normal. I'll admit that. This is not the normal we want to take on. We want to get rid of it. So make a note of those things, would you? Also, as I mentioned before, I do have a family system that includes the emotion emancipation, also known as, from the past, the get out of fear, anxiety, and phobia session. And what has happened is as I go through, every now and then I'll discover some sort of fear that I have, or some sort of anxiety I have, or my clients have a fear or an anxiety that comes up. In fact, I have a few testimonials from people who have engaged my services, to get rid of the core issues that they're having, that they recognize. Fear, mostly. Anxieties, one of these is an anxiety. And here one, Sarah M. says, "Our call yesterday was a big step forward for me. The old Sarah had an irrational fear of speaking about vulnerability and being seen. I felt the fear melt out of my body after just 30 minutes of intense fear release work with you. It worked wonders. I feel that things have improved. I've been doing more out of my shell, like participating in a song ceremony previously I would shy away from. It's been interesting, and I feel the fear has been released, and I'm adjusting to a new way of being." Yeah, that's what we want, right? And then I have Denise that has said, "My fear of dating is gone." She had a fear of dating. I'm dating a great guy at the moment and having a lot of fun. I should make a point here that this is not just something I do for parents. This is something that obviously can work for anyone that has a fear, anxiety, or phobia. And then lastly, Justine says, I can say that I really don't feel any more fear of running out of money. She had a fear of running out of money since our session. In fact, I am more relaxed and at ease about it than I've been for a long time. And not because I've come into sudden wealth. We'd like that to happen though, huh? So here's the thing. I have been able to turn my fears, anxieties, and phobias. I didn't quite have a phobia, but my clients have had phobias. And this is something that I'm offering to you. If you see that you would like to get rid of something that you recognize is in the way and always attracting certain kinds of behaviors from your family, from your spouse, from your coworkers, do contact me at emotionemancipation.com and let's have a look at it. Well, I thank you very much for watching and listening, and I'll see you here again next time on the Save Your Breath Show.